Good morning, this is Scott with Another Tone Woodworks. I wanted to start today with going over how I make my pens and that. I'm going to try to do this in a couple of part series, and this is kind of going to be the introduction to it. I'm going to be doing my Jack Daniel's cigar pens, and that here's one right here, and here is the blank for that. Kind of wanted to go over a few steps in that I personally do. So first off, whenever I do make a pen in that, I right away at the beginning I set up a box. So like this is for my hand razors and that, so like everything I need to do that, all the proper bushings, and I'll explain that later, all the bits. Sometimes I use the same bit, but I know, like, I write down what bushings in there, what bits to be used to figure it out. Now when it comes to the cigar, it was one of my first kits. I actually was able to go to my local woodcraft store and get a kit like this that had the drill bit and the bushings in a couple of starter kits. So this is my cigar one because I've used it multiple times and I know the process. I just know that this is my cigar kit, so I use it a lot, so especially for these Jack Daniel's blanks and that. So one thing I always do is I keep it organized. So I have a lot of these pens to do. So what I'll do is I'll separate it into, I have a couple additional boxes that I leave empty, so that way everything stays organized through it. And I have so many to do, I actually had to get a second one. So what I'll do is I'll take my blank, the certificate of authenticity, and I'll make sure I keep everything together. And here is one of my little kits, and that is it. This and this turn into this right here, and that. So it's really cool. Thank you for staying tuned with me, and that I look forward to kind of sharing how I do this and the steps I take to ensure that you, the customer, gets exactly what they want. Thank you very much. So I just unpacked a majority of what I have ready in that, so all my blanks are in individual spots in that, but I wanted to show you what was exactly in one of these bags in that. So put this on, and hopefully it'll all stay somewhat together in that. So we have our two barrels. These are going to go into the wood blank, and they are different sizes, so I'm going to kind of explain how I figured that out here in just a minute. You have your ink cartridge with a spring, and the cool thing about the pens is they are all disassemblable, so you can actually get the cartridge that you want, and that so there's right now I know of 2 different styles of pens and that, and you can get different ink cartridges off of like Amazon or Office Max and that, so to get that specific color that you want, or the flow or point that you want. And then we kind of got how it is assembled, the different parts. This is the tip, this is part of the center piece and that, and here is the back clip and that. So, and here is kind of the thing that makes the twist part happen, is this is what's called the transmission. So I have these 2 barrels. They are 2 different sizes. So I know that the short one is for the back end, or where the clip would go, and this is where you would hold the pen right here. So in order to cut the blank proper, I have to mark these and that. So, and because I'm going to be doing so many, there's a couple of things I can do. One thing I do is I have this little quick gauge by Craig Jig. I love this thing, and that works really good. It's really handy. Or I could use a ruler, and I measure each part of the each part. So I have it right there. It is, so right now this is 1/15/16 in that. I increase it by a 1/16 just to give me a little bit of play in that, so the barrel will be sure to be completely covered via my cuts and stuff like that. So once I have that all set, I lock it in place, and I'll go ahead and I'll start marking my blanks all the way through. Let's see if I have a pen anywhere. Luckily, I do. I can use this right away, and then it lets me know if the cartridge is good. There we go, right there. Now this one's a little bit bent. I don't necessarily like that, but there's a couple things I could do. Is I could just switch ends. So I'm actually going to cross this one out. I'm going to go to the other side and mark it. And you'll see that, you know, that line that I crossed out isn't going to be anything to worry about. Here's the other thing that I'm going to do, is I'm going to take, on the other side, I'm going to draw a line. And so I just measured where the clip's going to go. So I'm going to mark that as a 2. And I mark the other side a 1. Now that's going to help me with grain matching later on, and making sure that I don't get confused the pieces, because when you're doing large productions and that, it can get really easily confused what that you're doing something wrong in that. So next part is to cut all my pieces for the clip end in that. So I'll try to get the camera set up for that next. Thank you. What I did is I went through all my blanks, and if I zoom in here, so I'm making that Cigar Jack Daniels pen. I have my 2 over here, my 1 over here. So this is where the clip side. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut as straight as possible. There's a couple of different things that you could do in order to cut this. You could use a miter box, bandsaw, or you can even hand saw this. I find that the bandsaw is quicker for me in that. And remember how I gave myself a 1/16 of an inch play in that? That comes in as a factor here. So to make sure that I give it enough space in that, so if I accidentally, there's a little bit one side or another. So this is the first part of cutting the blank down to the proper size. So I already set up my bandsaw. But within a 1/2 inch, this guard is to the blank in that, and then I can go ahead and turn this on watch your hands when you're using a bandsaw. This bandsaws actually were kind of designed for cutting meat at your delis and that. It works great for cutting wood as well, but that means it can do a lot of damage really quick. So hand awareness, also be sure to wear safety glasses. So now that I cut all these down and I have the cap size, now I need the other side marked out. And how that's done is I'm grabbing my little Craig jig again. And so right now this is at 2 1/8. I'm going to increase it that 1/16 of an inch just for play. And that's my choice. I do that personally. So there we go. 1/16 oversize. And now I get to go back and so remember how I would mark the grain direction on these with that little line right there. So now I know I can put that right here and I can mark it. You want us to keep the grain consistent so that way when you line it up. So like that's how I used to do it, is just hold the blank up to the barrel and then I would make sure I gave myself a little bit extra. But now this Craig jig, boom, a little bit more accurate, and there's your line right there. So I gave myself a little bit extra in that when doing it by hand. Hello, so back in that, I just finished cutting the edge off of all of these pieces. So this ends up being scrap wood, and now I have my piece in that. And I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see. So this is my cap side, and this is where my hand's gonna go on the pen, and you can kind of see where that line is. That helps me line up everything, and also so when I'm measuring out the front part or either part in that, I cut the right part off because we want this grain to match. This pen's gonna be, I feel, is gonna look really cool with this grain pattern on it. So next step is we're gonna drill. I don't want to say, so this kit will come with a 10mm pen bit. Here it is right here. I've used this one quite a bit, obviously, as you can tell. We're gonna put this into a Jacob's chuck on the lathe, and we're going to go ahead and center bore these just like that. All of them in that. So it's a bunch of cuts in that, so I'm going to do a little video on how I do that. There's multiple ways to do this. lot common way is to use a drill press, or I've even done it by hand with a power battery operated drill. The thing is, you want to try to stay in the center as possible, because if you get too close to the edge, when it comes to turning it, you could blow out the side, and it wouldn't be, or you could get a flat spot on it. So that's why I use the technique that I'm going to use, and that I'm going to use a chuck jaw, and that with a special attachment, and I'll get that set up right now for you guys. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and this is just the way that works for me, but it's always up to interpretation and the person doing it. So I grabbed my Nova Chuck 3 in that, and I already went ahead and took out the screws and that attach, and here it is right here. These are, so what happens is with this is these will clamp down onto your workpiece and that, and I'm trying to think what I was doing that I was using this. I think I was making like a scoop of some type, and that's why I had these. But this really comes in handy, this jaw kit in that. So if you look close, there is a 1 there. Each part of the jaw is signified. What does that one say? 4. So, and it corresponds to the bottoms of these, and that. So this one says 2, so I'll line this up with 2 and go ahead and screw this on. What this is going to do is, when I get both of them attached properly, they're going to be like that, and then they'll hold onto the piece in 2 places. That way it'll center it to from your headstock to your tailstock, and that, so it will go try to be as close to center as possible. There's a little leeway in that, but usually it's pretty good. So I'll go ahead and get this in place, and then I'll go over to the lathe and get that set up.